Natalie, is it Baldock? Sorry, by the way.
Yeah, Baldock.
Okay. Natalie Baldock, Institute of Integrative Nutrition, real food coach, recipe developer, women's mentor, international speaker and author. Her next installment, In God's Garden, is due in weeks. A book that debunks common nutrition myths and simplifies food once and for all. Natalie has spent the most of 2 decades teaching traditional lifestyle principles and food methodologies that assist people in bettering their health and vitality. Her wisdom on topics of health will wow you. Today, we talk to her about how we, as women who are often running on adrenaline, about calming the fuck down, on how to manage our busy lives so that we not just survive, but thrive. Thanks for joining us, Natalie.
Oh, you're so welcome. I love listening to my intro. I sound so fancy.
Well, you are. You're fancy around here. Now, you're a champion for women and our health status. And of course, there are women who were raised with a holistic health approach. But for most of us, usually it's something or someone that has been a catalyst for a personal health reboot. Now, what led you down this path?
Well, I grew up in an environment where I had a grandmother who grew everything and spent a lot of time in the garden. So I was around that all the time. And later in my life, Mum and Dad had a fruit and vegetable market. So I was around it right up until I was about 12, 13. And then from 13, when we start to become teenager, we start to want to eat our own type of food. And we introduced foods into the family diet that were probably a little bit more processed. And from that point on, I suffered with quite a few ill health issues. And I don't know why. I mean, there was definitely some emotional reasons for this also, but I would overtrain, undernourish, and I ended up with a lot of yeast infections. So those yeast infections that I had were not diagnosed in the 1990s. You know, I think it was 88, I was first diagnosed with an infection. And from there, it just got worse and worse and worse. And, you know, when you have a chronic yeast infection, they call it candida or candida albicans. And it wasn't diagnosed at that time. All I was given was antibiotics repeatedly. And I think I went through 40, 50, I've lost count, rounds of antibiotics, which diminished my immune system and made me quite unwell for quite a long period of time. So right up until I was 26 years of age, those infections escalated into a myriad of other conditions. Although in that time frame, all I was doing was individually having diagnoses on each condition, and we were medicating for each condition and not seeing it as an underlying precursor to everything else. And that was hard. It was really hard. So, you know, forever just doctor, naturopath. And, you know, it wasn't the naturopath in the beginning. It was a doctor for a very long time. That's the only form of healing we knew about. And right up until my mid-20s, I was on a cycle of infection, antibiotic, low immune system, and repeat.
Yeah.
On repeat. And of course, you know, when your immune system's weak, so is your emotional center, so is your confidence. And of course, that had a myriad of emotional responses as well. And when I say emotional responses, I think my behavior in my 20s was appalling.
Yeah, well, I think you could say that for most of us, but for much of us. But I think you're right. The you know, the impact that those medications, and you know, I hate to be banging on negatively about GPs, but that was the only way that they knew. And I think you know, we're still learning so much today. And I think we place so much emphasis in the old days on the GPs, right? So much trust and emphasis. And perhaps that might have been a tad misguided, because somewhere along the way, we lost our ability to own our own health journey and look into it ourselves, right, before we went there. But that's happened a lot, hasn't it?
Well, it was when I was 26, somebody took me to a Louise Hay teacher training workshop They thought it might be something I might enjoy. And I trained under her and did a 3-day workshop called You Can Heal Your Life. And as I'm sitting there and I'm listening, and we're talking about the female region, we're talking about that entire area from, so I've had cysts on my ovaries, I've had chronic period issues, very, very heavy periods, and then no periods for a long period of time. And I've had a lot of anxiety and even bouts of depression, all linked to candida. And I'm sitting there and she's talking about candida. And I'm listening and she's saying, people with candida have no boundaries. And it hit me like a ton of bricks. I had no boundaries. I was a supreme people pleaser. I felt so weak inside myself that I was just doing lovely things for people 24/7 and saying yes to everyone and being super loyal to the wrong people and being super loyal to the wrong employer for years and years and years, and doing things out of my own personal place of self-love. And that's why I went on that journey. So my journey with nutrition didn't start with food. It started with an emotional response. And I just literally sat in that and thought, I've got no boundaries. And I've got a real serious issue, a yeast infection within my system that it's expressing itself, in the most revolting and embarrassing way, that I just thought, wow, okay, I can see where I've got no boundaries, even sexually. And so that was really alarming for me. I just went, and that was the moment that I culled poor quality food. I culled certain friendships. I culled certain behaviors, and I woke up and it was the most amazing moment of my life. I literally have to thank Louise Hay and her book for saving my life. And now I'm publishing with Balboa Press, which is an arm of the Louise Hay Publishing House. So I feel like it was like, wow, someone just came and just yanked me out of my pain. And I think I'm very blessed. I feel very awake, and I felt very awake since that moment.
Yeah, right. And that makes sense. I think, wow, okay. So the candida manifested itself in a way that really had that psychological impact, right? When we talk about no boundaries, that is usually what we consider to be, lack of boundaries when it comes to any kind of emotional upsets or ongoing stuff. But it really was related to a physical ailment of sorts. And so getting onto nature's path, or getting onto a better, or improving your lifestyle with food, you're saying that just completely turned that around and turned the candida around and turned all of these other potentially psychological issues around. No other work required?
I think what happened is when I tidied up the diet and I went back to God's garden, meaning that I ate all the types of foods that were here pre-supermarket days, everything we grew from scratch, everything that was seasonal produce. And when I started to eat like that and really understand the rhythm, and please know, this took a long time. This was not an overnight thing. I felt my way through that. I had no textbooks to read. At first, I was having pasta with lots of homemade tomato sauce, and then I moved into like, well, hang on a minute, I can make zoodles, zucchini noodles, and I can make a beautiful sauce with tons of veggies in it, and that was the transition. It was really, really, it took a while, and I went down the vegan path. I went down the paleo path. I went down the vegetarian, the pescatarian path, and I really feel blessed that I've done all of that. I know what it feels like to really be a crash test dummy in the area of nutrition. I know what it feels like to overeat starchy carbohydrates, undereat meat and good quality proteins. I know what it feels like to have a sugar imbalance in the diet. I understand all that. I felt it. And the most amazing thing is when I cut out the alcohol and the other things that I was doing in my life, because life was a bit tumultuous in my 20s, I actually lifted the fog and went, okay, that is the first step to feeling better. Then I had to address the emotions, and I had to look back at where in my life pre-13 did I adopt low self-worth in my female region.
Yeah.
And then we got deeper and deeper and deeper. And then I had to look at that. And that was ugly and it was hard, but I went into it, I felt it, and I moved past it.
Oh, well done. Now, obviously, you had good foundations for understanding normal, natural foods, healthy foods, foods that are coming straight out of our ground. But what did you sort of settle on when it came to diet style? Obviously, you tried paleo, vegetarianism, veganism, all of those. So where are you now? What works for you now?
Well, I use a methodology of 30% protein, 60% plants, and 10% fat. That's my diet. And it's actually, if you walk into a pharmacy and you say, look, I want to be as healthy as I can, as naturally as I can, what can you recommend? They're going to recommend for you. They're going to recommend a good fat, an omega fatty acid. They're going to recommend a probiotic, which is good for your gut. And they're going to recommend a multivitamin, which is where all your fruit and vegetable nutrition, all the multivitamins, all your vitamins and minerals and antioxidants come from your plant kingdom. So even the medical industry and the pharmaceutical industry knows exactly how to keep us healthy. They've done it in a medical form or a pharmaceutical form, but in nature, it's exactly the same thing. We need to find which protein suits our body. We need to find the arrangement of plants that best suits our energy. If you're exercising really hard every day, you're going to need more starchy carbohydrates in your plant kingdom. But if you're sedentary and you sit at an office desk all the time and you have a lot of stress, you want to have lots of green leafy salads with your protein. And then your fat is just adding avocado, adding nuts and seeds, or putting a really good quality oil onto your salads and your veggies. And so when I wrote I wrote a book a long time ago called How to Plate Up. And how to plate up was how to plate up, but choose your protein. So you can be pescatarian, you can be paleo, you can be vegetarian, you can be vegan in this program. And so it's something I wrote a long time ago. I actually sold that off. I don't own that anymore. It's gone. It's in the hands of a very, very good company. And I'm so pleased that I was able to do that. But my methodology will always be the same. Protein, plants, and fats, 30, 60, 10. And if everyone adopts that, they can choose to be vegan or vegetarian or paleo or pescatarian. And the reason why those particular diets work, and keto sits in there too, the reason why they work is because they are sovereign diets. And what I mean by that is that if you go to Japan and Asia, they'll eat more fish and green seaweeds, and fermented foods because they live around water. Then you look at Australia, it's more keto-based, it's more paleo-based. We eat animals and we eat plant kingdom, and then you go to, say, Antarctica and you're eating fish and whale blubber and, you're not seeing lots of green leafy vegetables. It's very keto-based. And so really, when we look at diets, we're looking at area-specific sovereign diets that have been passed on for years. And these countries are the countries that actually have the highest life expectancies, ancient countries, where the diet has been passed down and they really do eat a protein. They eat lots of plants and fat is incorporated into their diet somehow every time. Yeah. So when you say, what's my diet? Well, I reckon I'm flexitarian. I reckon I swing from vegetarian and veganism in summer because it's hot and I want light food. And then in winter, I do my earthy soups and curries and stews and my ossobucos and all sorts of stuff. So I don't know. I don't want to be labeled.
Perfect. That's perfect. And I think it's really important for people to understand it and to break it down like that, as you say, kind of how to play it up is important, because it's just understanding what that balance needs to be. I think we've so lost our way with diet. I don't know what it is. It's almost like when we were kids, you got these things as treats. I don't know, there's a burger or whatever it was. And then suddenly, when I say suddenly, over the last 20, 30 years, and as we get older, these things infiltrate our lives like they're a normal part of your diet, normal part of your day. So we've I think this is where we've lost, right? So it's coming back to being that break up the plate to protein. But what protein means to you is entirely your choice, of course. Okay, brilliant. All right. So now, you may not know this, but Pure Health Hub's unofficial tagline is wellness without the woo. And the reason behind that is our aim to bring back functional, evidence-based medicine to the fore for women, for all women, but of course, particularly for women 40 plus, because I think this is when we need it most. Obviously it'd be nice if we started much earlier, but doesn't always seem to be the case. But our priority here is to keep it practical and easy to digest. Excuse the pun. Now, so what I think I wanted to then go into, you touched on it briefly, but I was really curious about the title of food methodologist and vibrational medicine coach. Could you walk us through those?
So the food methodologist is someone that creates a method around eating. So I don't know anyone else with this title. I came up with this title myself. It's not something that is a university degree. Now, when people say, what do you do? And I say, I make method around food. So, when I have a client and that client will sit with me, we will do a 2-hour session. Half an hour of that session is a bit of a diagnosis on what they've eaten over the last 7 days, what they've eaten, what they've drunk, and how they've felt inside their bodies over that 7 days. And what we're trying to do is identify with each client where they might be, say, we look at different categories where they might be having too much stress, not enough plant-based nutrition, too much sugar-based foods, too much starchy carbohydrates for a sedentary lifestyle, what actually is underlying emotionally and also physically and also nutritionally to cause the issue that they're actually there in front of me with. So when I say food methodologist, all we're doing is trying to give them the how to plate up method, or the protein, plants and fats method, but we're trying to put together a plan for them that actually works for their lifestyle and also for their loves and passions around food. When I say loves and passions, a lot of people are very passionate about being a vegan. Some people are very passionate about barbecuing. So we need to incorporate all of that into their plan. And when I say food methodologist, I also mean that I write recipes for restaurants as well. And sometimes I've written recipes and menus for restaurants that want a certain feeling. They want the food to be light. They want everyone to enjoy the food and feel light and not feel heavy and leave early. They want people to stay and drink more wine and enjoy themselves. So the method around that is really coming up with a beautiful menu that is balanced but lighter. And so when
extremely tasty. I mean, that's,
of course. I've got all my food's tasty.
Yeah, well, exactly. But I mean, if you're writing them for restaurants, it's an interesting place to be, because obviously you've got to tick a lot of boxes there. But it's also interesting because restaurants now are really, that is a big focus for them, right? Because, and particularly for us of a certain age, you're right. I don't want to go to a restaurant and walk out like I've just eaten a cow, or, I think, so it's really fascinating that they're taking, that they're engaging people like you to help them find that place. That's fantastic. Okay, so vibrational medicine coach. Tell me about that.
So everything is a vibration. Food is a vibration. Some foods are heavier and hold a heavier vibration, and some foods are lighter and hold a lighter vibration. Some foods have a winter vibration and some have a summer vibration. So when I look at food and I look at it as an energy for the body, I'm also feeling into the energy of that person and what they need to heal. And, you know, if somebody is going through a really tough time and a really heavy time, to actually give them a food program that's very heavy in starchy plant-based carbohydrates can often make them stay in that feeling. And what we want to do is we want to bring them out of that feeling. So when we talk food and vibration, we're looking at that. When we're talking about vibration of body, we're talking about breath work. We're talking about bioresonance therapy. So I work very closely with bioresonance therapists that actually work on the vibration of the disease inside somebody's body, and then they will recalibrate a vibration to help them move past that. And so this is very, very old technology. The Biocom machine or bioresonance therapy has been around for about 3 decades now. It's widely used in Europe. And there's only a handful of people in Australia that do that. And the people that do this are highly trained. So I work with them, and I also work with breath technicians and meditation teachers to help some of my clients move spiritually, emotionally through particular issues. I'll give you a great example. I went to my own breath technician to get past a sciatic nerve injury in my hip. We did a 2-hour session of breath work, breathing into the area, and the tears come up and the emotion comes up. And the right hip represents stubbornness on a negative side. But on the positive side, it is your strong masculine side that moves you forward in life. Now, at that particular time, I was making a huge decision around letting go of a ginormous love and passion to move into another more powerful love and passion. And I was super scared, and my sciatic nerve was pinching and twinging. And I have a really stubborn nature. So my stubbornness and my addiction to people pleasing and loyalty was coming up. So I'm like, I've got to stay, I've got to stay, I've got to stay, I've got to stay. And so I was getting this pinching, shooting nerve pain in my hip. So when I went to my breath technician, we breathed into that, and I cried a lot, and I realized that my loyalty holds me back. My stubbornness, sometimes I need to be more flexible in my thought. And then my hip pain went away for about 3 weeks. But that was enough time for me to see that I needed to make the decision. And in that time frame, I made the biggest decision of my life, and it's paid off.
Wow, that is quite an experience.
By the way,
it's almost like you're talking to me as a client at this point. It's like, really? Okay, right. Wow, that's fascinating. And a breath coach. I'm going to write that down. I haven't even explored that option yet. Okay, and when you say it moved for about 3 weeks, so what happened then? You had to make that decision, and did that then alleviate that?
So I knew I had to make the decision, and because I was putting it off, the pinching was coming back.
Yeah,
it was saying, you need to make this decision. And when I did make the decision, the pain eased off, and I felt relaxed, and I felt so good in myself for making the decision, and the stress left my body, and I've had no pain ever since.
Nonsense.
And I think the thing that people don't understand, also too, I mean, I have to also talk to you about other things too, because I changed my regime at home as well. I added in collagen, liquid collagen, which is so awesome for joint health. And I also stopped walking and I started swimming.
Yeah. Well, obviously they are very important elements. The mobility is extremely important as we get older. But I think, you know, the pain associated with psychological issues is certainly something not to be ignored. Wow. Okay. That's fascinating. Okay. So, really interesting, the vibrational medicine coach. I love that. I'd like to dig a little deeper into that another time. But you also carry the title of Menopause Mentor. What does a menopause mentor do? And could you give us some examples of what women really don't know about menopause?
Well, I don't profess to be a doctor of women's health at all. I would never ever say that. But what I realized is that there is a supreme element around nutrition and menopause. And the things that make menopause symptoms worse is any inflammatory foods. So if I was to sit with a client, I would make sure that they don't have a large amount of wheat, yeast, and gluten, processed dairies, and refined sugars in their diets. Making sure that they're eating a lot of green leafy vegetables, and they're eating 5 small meals a day, around 200 to 250 calories a day, rather than eating 3 big meals, because as their progesterone and estrogen lowers going into menopause, everything starts to get really, really tired within the body. Joints start to ache. Digestion doesn't work as much. We start to get that little pot tummy. We put a little bit of weight on because our metabolism changes. Our collagen stores start to drop by about 20% at the between age of 45 and 50. So our face starts to sag. We need additional nutrients in the diet, and we need to stimulate metabolism by eating more over the course of the day, and also drinking lots of water. But as we go into menopause, we also need to understand there is a really strong emotional element to not accepting the graceful years of our lives. And when I say I'm a menopause mentor, I'm always forever wanting to hold the hands of women in their late 40s up to their early 60s and just say it's okay to get old. It's the most beautiful place to be. We're wiser, we're stronger, we care less about what others think. And you can age so gracefully with the right system.
Yeah, absolutely agree. And I think what a fabulous opportunity, really, to be talking to women. You know, I think we often get a little terrified by the whole process. You know, all we hear about is that, you know, everything stops and then everything, all the awful stuff starts. But I think the important thing for us is understanding what those things that are likely to happen or could happen or do happen or are happening, and what we can do to alleviate that and get on with it, right? So what a wonderful thing to be able to have a menopause mentor to go through that, because I think we just really don't know what to expect, because it's been hiding in the archives in the den forever, unless you had a really communicative mother, and really you didn't want to know about it at that point anyway. So what a fabulous thing to offer.
We actually have a group in Perth called Lady Bits.
Yeah.
And it's for itchy, bitchy, scratchy women who are intolerable, who just want to drink bloody wine.
Oh, that's fabulous. Oh, that's wonderful.
It's so much fun. And, you know, when I was going into menopause, and I didn't want to admit that myself, and it was a very emotional time, I didn't want to be a menopause mentor. I was like, I'm too embarrassed to do this. I want to tell anyone that I'm going through menopause. But I'm now on the other side of understanding it, and my symptoms have lessened because of my own learning and my own practices, that now I'm really finding it the most beautiful time of my life. I really like who I am, and I really don't give a shit what anyone thinks of me anymore.
And that is a massive realization, isn't it? I think for me, that's huge as well. You know, I think you came to some great realizations when you were 26. Well, it's taken me, you know, a lot longer to get to that. But I think that's, you know, again, another reason for the hub. Let's not just, you know, pull ourselves back and hide behind the curtains, because I'm sure as shit not going to. But I've got to get on with it. So I've got to work out what I can do with all of this, and then, you know, keep moving. So, yeah, I agree. We can't, you know, I don't really want to be a menopause, you know, proponent of menopause and going through it and how we get through it. But, you know, if we don't, you know, we're not helping anybody. And I think it's an important thing for us to do. So moving on to something else, and what's very exciting is in a few weeks' time, we're going to be welcoming your book, In God's Garden. Now, this is about, you profess that this book is about simplifying food once and for all. Now, that surely is the Holy Grail. how have you come to that conclusion?
Well, the thing is, we plant food, we grow food, we eat food, and we feel good. But when we go through the supermarket and we push a metal trolley inside of a big building, down aisles full of cans and plastic and packages, and everything's bright and colourful, we often really, really confuse ourselves around what is nutrition. And even we're complicating health food. Health food has 50 ingredients in it. This is really, really healthy, this acai berry bowl, but it's got 15 ingredients in it. And why does my tummy turn in knots when I have it, when it's meant to be healthy? And it's because food was meant to be eaten in a very simple way. And the Italians have got this right. They have an insalata, they do a salad, and it's tomato, basil, and a beautiful bocconcini cheese, which has been cured themselves with a touch of oil. Or they'll do a simple, beautiful pasta that's homemade with an oil and some garlic, and it's just about understanding where our food comes from. How do we get plants into our diet so we have energy and we have vitamins, we have minerals, we have antioxidants? People don't realize vitamins are for energy, and mineral nutrition is for your immune strength and your body's strength, and your antioxidants is to protect you from free radical damage. And they come from the colors of the rainbow. Your purples are your antioxidants, your reds are your antioxidants, your oranges and yellows are your vitamins, your greens are your mineral nutrition. And the thing is, if we understand it and simplify, it's like eat a rainbow every day, eat seasonal produce, grow what you can. Don't just make a salad with lettuce and tomato on it only. Why not put in coriander? Why not put in parsley? Why not put in sprouts? Lift the mineral nutrition in your salads. So what we're doing in nutrition is overcomplicating health and overcomplicating disease. When we start to eat simple, seasonal, and structured, what happens is that body heals. And I really think it's a return to home. When we start to honour what God put on the planet for us to eat in the first place, and it's not a religious comment when I say that. To me, the acronym for God is Grand Organised Design. And I believe that it was here, all of this food grows beautifully for us to eat. And there's a saying that my grandma used to always say to me, is that your healing is only 50 metres from your home. And I never knew what she meant until I started looking at food sovereignty and the safety of food. And I started looking at historics, and I started to look at lineage and all the food that comes through the healthiest populations of the world. And what I realized was that the foods that we eat are there to heal us, and they grow close to us because it's in the grand organized design of our lives. So if I turned around and showed you my aquaponics, I've got so much mint, so much basil, so much, there's coriander, there's
good are they? Yeah.
And what do I need? I'm a high vibration soul. I'm here I've got a big job to do on the planet. So I need to make sure my immune system I'm always on. So it's important to honour what was here in the first place. And so when we say simplify nutrition, I'm talking about the most simple things that we have lost the understanding of, like taking a organic seed and sucking it and placing it in the dirt, because your bacteria and that bacteria in the dirt and that seed start to work in harmony to create a plant that will heal whatever's going on for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And people don't know this stuff.
Yeah. I often bang on about, truth in food labeling, for example. It just really freaks me out that we can't have that. But, to be honest, we probably should be just eating more of the products that don't have labeling at all, and that are coming straight out of our garden. Now, I just want to very quickly just touch on what I did love reading what introduced me to you initially. Now, you're reaching to women's health, of course, and what I'm learning is a lifetime of stress held inevitably wears down the body, mind, and spirit, escalating illness and age. I loved your little ebook, Calming the Fuck Down, the stress test and relief guide for the modern woman. I loved it, and I would also love to share it with our audience if anybody's interested. Thank you. But apart from the obvious aging process, why do women seem to suffer from more stress and illness as we age?
Oh, there's so many reasons. It's such a big
question. Okay.
But I think we have a lot more social pressures, more financial pressures. I think life is extremely busy. When I was a little girl, I remember the first time I ever played sport, I was 12 years old. I remember my mum being at home with me every day after school until I was 13. I remember my life being full of fun and love and laughter. It was simple. And although I was a big personality, I always felt safe in my home. But I've been a single mum since Taj was a little boy, and the pressure that I put on myself to make sure I was at every bake sale, to make sure I was at the P&C meetings, to make sure that I was organising all the play dates, and he was playing 3 different sports by the time he was 7 years old. We're on our phones a lot more. We financially want more than our parents did. Like, everyone has to have a second house and second car, and everyone has to have the best quality food,
but some women are just trying to get by
on more than just one holiday.
Yeah. Well, there is that too, I think.
Yeah, and you know what? That's a very big point too. Yeah.
Yeah, I think
So I
trying
think
to get by on
that.
Yeah, especially if you're on your own. I mean, I wasn't on my own, but I still came up against some serious stress. But I think that is the ultimate thing, isn't it, really? It's the stress that we need to learn to manage. And we do need, I just felt that little ebook was just calling me and was yelling at me for like 2 years ago. And I would have loved to have had someone saying that to me then, except my husband. He would not have survived that. Now, okay, look, we are over time, but I do want to ask you just one last thing. If there was just one pearl of wisdom you could share with women and our audience, what would it be?
Well, we were laughing about this question before because
I still don't
I've
know
had a
what
saying that I know. Well, I've had a saying that I've lived by my whole life, and it was from my grandfather. My grandfather died when I was in my teenage years. And he said one last thing to me. He said, never reheat old meat. And I just went, okay, Granddad. So I made sure that I never put a steak on the barbecue twice. But what he actually meant was, don't make the same mistake twice, darling, because it doesn't pay off.
Yeah. How wonderful. When did you realise that?
It took me years. After I, dated the wrong man, and then the wrong man, and then the wrong man, I was like, oh, that's what he meant.
That's what he meant. Oh, bless him. What a blessing. What a guy. Oh, yeah. It's been such a treat to chat with you. Thank you so much for joining us on The Hub. I sincerely appreciate it. Let's do it again soon.
Beautiful. Thank you, Lindy.